You can listen to The Professional Left wherever you get your podcasts, on Netroots Radio, or at our website, proleftpod.com, where you can also contribute to this podcast. There's a PayPal button at that website. Oh, yes, there is. And you can mail us a letter and or contribution, or just hit our website and hit that PayPal button. If you want to send us a letter and or contribution, you can send it to P.O. Box 9133, Springfield, Illinois, which is where we live, 62791.
This is the podcast for the week of June 16th, 2023. It's Not Safe for Work.
Recorded live from the Cornfield Resistance, where we ask the musical question:
Did you enjoy the Führer's birthday?
May he live for 1,000 years.
It's The Professional Left with Drift Glass and Blue Gal. Hey, Blue Gal, we're back from vacation.
We're back, and thank you, everybody who had kind words to say about my sister and my family and everybody. Everybody's doing pretty well, and I think my sister in particular liked having a picnic where she didn't have to talk about cancer. So
yeah.
The focus was on the young people.
Yes.
The youngest child and middle child went. Of course,
Yes.
Junior Dude is out in Washington State, but the other two were there. And then my middle sister, I'm the oldest of three. So my middle sister's daughter just graduated from high school.
She did.
And she's doing very well and going off to college. And then my nephew, who has autism, he actually had a piano recital that his mother shared with me. Amazing music teacher. Got him to play some notes on a piano and control his sensory involvement, and able to sit and play a few notes, stand up and bow. What is it? Fist bump. That's it. Fist bump with one of his classmates afterwards.
Yeah.
And all of that is a victory. So we're so grateful.
Hey, I got a fist bump this week.
Time. We got fist bumps and we got head bumps from my nephew. Yes.
Which is a big deal.
He was able to be surrounded by people and give people little head bumps and little fist bumps. And for him, that is hard. So
and then go off and hang out with the goats.
He went, and my middle sister has a farm with goats and chickens and roosters and 2 swings, and that's very important. My nephew really likes to swing, so he walked around and did some swinging and gave us fist bumps to say goodbye, and we gave him a pizza gift certificate,
right?
Because he loves pizza parties, and so we got to see him. We were glad to see everybody.
It's a very peaceful, calm place.
Yeah,
a lot of room to walk around with no danger to yourself. And
so
we saw birds fighting.
We had a good time. Yeah,
we saw birds fighting over a nest. There was a
we did see
argument.
Birds fighting off a blue jay. Yes,
and what the hell's all that noise? And then the chickens came out, and we all watched, and it was nature, which is red of tooth and claw.
It was nature, and roosters like watermelon rind. Yeah, so
write that down.
Our picnic had entertainment with the roosters eating the watermelon rind.
It was dinner and a show. So, what do you
exactly. So, and also Trump was indicted. So we all had something to celebrate.
We did.
We weren't sure about certain members of our family, certain in-laws, and whether they were, what side of the political spectrum they were on, or in the middle, or whatever, imaginary middle, or whatever. But it turns out, nope. Yep. Everybody was delighted to hear that Donald Trump had been indicted.
Yeah. I didn't have to go into any complex, discussion of whatever and why this.
Didn't have to debate anybody.
No. Oh yeah. Good thing.
And one of my in-laws said, "Oh, you know why they didn't like Obama? He was black. That's why."
Oh, okay.
Like, okay.
Yeah.
We don't have to explain anything.
He was black. They hate him because he's black. Okay.
Yep.
Cool.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. So
no further discussion.
It all worked out very, very well.
And then
you got to do the crossword puzzle with my dad.
I did.
Sunday, New York Times crossword puzzle in 37 minutes in ink.
Well, and then we dug into at the picnic the history of the foods of our various cultures.
Oh yeah, because one of the people there is definitely Italian.
Yes,
and is a great cook. And had a lot to say about food.
And what about, everybody used to raise something and they'd come together and you used to have, sausages hanging from his truck and the aging of the cheese. And it was wonderful. It was
wonderful storytelling about food. Yeah.
Lost culinary traditions were revived. And I could talk about my grandmother, my mother, and my grandmother never wanted anybody to write down her recipes. She was very secretive about that. It was like, Grandma, how much sugar do you put? Oh, just a touch, just a dab, just a handful. And she would, and she cooked that way. It's a little bit of sugar.
I know somebody else like that. Kamala Harris is like that too.
Yeah. So
just a little bit.
But it was just wonderful memories that despite the fact that we come from different cultures, we all had parents or grandparents who were this way.
Yeah.
And how
Victory Gardens.
And how fun it was and how the food was always good and the stories were always lively.
Yep.
And how lucky we were to live in those times.
How lucky we all were to be able to be together.
Yeah.
On a lovely June day. So I want to start with my bugaboo, WinRed.
Yeah.
The Republican fundraising arm, which is a for-profit company. And I know I've gotten on this horse often, but I think it's very important to follow the money and talk about how when you watch Republicans respond to the Trump indictment, remember that someone close to ketchup thrower is raking in money via the for-profit WinRed and also controlling who gets those Political Action Committee donor lists that Trump owns.
That's right.
Who gets the phone numbers to text people, to text the most gullible donors in history who are still donating to Donald Trump? Who gets access?
Yeah. Who gets the Glengarry leads, Who gets the premium leads? Yeah.
Who gets the good leads? Who gets the ones who will send money to Donald Trump as he's indicted for giving away secrets?
Yep.
And now we found out today, possibly damaging Israel's defense.
Yeah. That's not going to go down well.
That's not going to go down well with the Pence crowd.
That's going
or the former Pence crowd.
Yeah. The vice president formerly known as Pence. So
yeah.
And first of all, as you and I talked about earlier today, this WinRed data thing reminds me of Brian Doyle Murray in the last 5 minutes of Caddyshack. Because there's chaos and explosions and a whole bunch of shit going on around, and he's focused on one thing.
Making sure that golf ball isn't going to go in the hole.
It's the ball in the hole. It's the ball.
Yeah.
And there is someone in the organization whose job it is to make sure the money from WinRed keeps coming in. And everybody knows that I have the premium leads, and you're going to have to pay me for those. And I will hold them ransom for your loyalty if necessary.
Yep. And if you cross me, you're out.
You're out. And secondly, I think it's important that we each have a couple, 3 things that we come back to over and over again and repeat over and over again.
Of course you do.
Because no labels, been on no labels for 13 years.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, you called it before anybody.
Right. 2 days after they chartered. 2 days after they dropped in 2010. Nope, this is who they are. This is what they're going to do. This is how they operate. Look at the roster of people who are now heading it. David Brooks and Joe Scarborough and a bunch of other, the usual douchebags that we all been following for a decade before that. And we knew what they were about. We knew about the fake centrism they were trying to pimp out and make money off of. And lo and behold, 13 years later, suddenly, as if by magic, everyone's like, hey, this no labels thing seems sketchy. I'm not sure about that. And I'm doing a post right now. I'm working on one on my head called The Importance of Being on TV. Because Rick Wilson has discovered that No Labels exists and it's a sketchy outfit. And Rick Wilson has, for his tweets of this, 200,000 retweets and 3,000 comments. And I went back to my original post from 2010 and I got 16 comments. And in the last 13 years, it's been read about 3,000 times, which is huge for my blog. But it is nothing. So it is really, really important, not just me, but for liberals in general, to understand that the reason you want to get in front of the camera is because if you don't, you're leaving it to the never-Trumpers who will now control the agenda from now on. You're leaving it to the Rick Wilsons of the world, and a whole bunch of people that you know and love and care about will go, that Rick Wilson seems like a pretty good guy. Seems like a pretty good guy. I wouldn't send money to WinRed, but I'll send him a check for $200,000.
Right.
Because he seems to know what he's doing. Now, I know, speaking of raising money and the fact that, with POA, and we need income stream. I know you've been bugging me to apply for that sweet, sweet Fox News political director gig.
I was hoping you'd sent your resume in already, Driftglass.
Well, I've been working on my resume with middle child because she knows that stuff. Apparently, I'm too old and too.
Yes, she's the expert now in workforce development. Yes. That's adorable.
No, you don't want to mention the year you had the job, because nobody's going to hire you if you had a job during the Eisenhower administration.
Yeah,
which is true. But now that we are finally returning to civility in this country, Bluegal, finally we're turning a corner into civility. I'm angling for a position at that Ronald Reagan Presidential Foundation and Institute. This is my number one priority. Now I'm going to read you something from PR Wire, which made me so happy that I now know what my future is. I now know what I want to do when I grow up. I want to go work for the Ronald Reagan Institute. Quote, Ronald Reagan Foundation and Institute announces new center on, wait for it, public civility. Oh yeah, that's my spot right there. That's my G spot right there. That one just oh yeah. Oh, the Board of Trustees of the Ronald Reagan Presidential Foundation and Institute, RRPFI, now it's an eye chart, announced today the formation of a new nonpartisan center on public civility to be led by media executive and Reagan Foundation board chairman Frederick J. Ryan Jr. Now, you know a little bit about Fred Ryan that I was not surprised to hear, but I was like, oh, yeah, that makes perfect sense. You want to share that with the kids?
Yeah, he's the publisher and chief executive until he took this sweet, sweet Ronald Reagan job, civility job. He was the publisher and chief executive of the Washington Post. Under Mr. Bezos. Yeah.
Yeah. So he's the one who...
he presided over explosive growth during the Trump years, but couldn't avert the effects of the industry's downturn over the past 2 years.
Yeah.
When, everything's sane again in the White House, and we aren't rushing to open the paper every morning to find out if the world's going to blow up.
Yeah. So this is the guy whose name was on the paycheck of torture enthusiast Mark Thiessen, the occasional contributor to that play, to that before he died, Michael Gerson, Jennifer Rubin, before she had her come to Jesus moment and realized she'd been wrong about everything her entire life. This is the guy, and who was also, surprise, surprise, the Reagan Foundation board chairman at the same time. So the center, I'm back to the quote now, will promote constructive solutions across the deep divisions and discord in America, which is very exciting because I've been waiting for this my whole life. Back to the article. The decline of civility and respect is posing a significant threat to the foundation of our democracy. Divisiveness and a lack of trust are damaging our political processes and causing Americans to lose faith in its institutions and their leaders. Now, think about that sentence for a second. Nothing specific is mentioned. No incidents, no actions, no specific things, just a group called Americans who for some reason are losing faith in their institutions and leaders because of a lack of civility. Where it came from, who caused it, who struck John first, who the instigators are, we don't really know. It's all a very big mystery, which is weird because this guy ran a major American newspaper for all those years. But for some reason, it's just this toxic environment in politics, social media, and increasingly across our society is making it more difficult for us to find common ground and act for the greater good of the nation. Oh, I have many, many thoughts on what we should put in the common ground. But I'll move on. Americans overwhelmingly...
You promised, Driftglass.
I just alluded to it, Blue Gal. I didn't state it explicitly. I'm working on my civility, okay? I got to get this job. I need this job. If you want that new car, Blue Gal...
I don't.
I got to get this job. So Americans overwhelmingly agree. I want to see a statistic behind this because there's a lot of assertions about what Americans want and Americans need. But Americans agree that we must return to an era of civility and mutual respect. And I got to ask myself, when was that era, Blue Gal? Do you suppose that era of civility, was it when Newt Gingrich was running the GOP?
No, I think it was much earlier than that.
Was it Rush Limbaugh being the voice of the Republican
Party? I think it was right around the time that returning GIs, the white ones were getting GI Bill benefits, and the black ones weren't. And all the women were being pushed out of the workplace and back home.
So we're talking about a return to an era of white supremacy.
Yes, white male supremacy.
White men ran things and everybody else knew their goddamn place and didn't talk back. Okay, I get it. I understand. And the Center on Public Civility will be a catalyst, a really good consulting word, catalyst. In this, it means you won't do anything. It'll just ask other people to do stuff.
Catalyst,
in this critical effort, that invites individuals and institutions. That's me, Blue Gal. I'm both an individual and an institution from across the country. I'm in the country to become part of this initiative. Quote, it is a tremendous honor to be asked to lead this new center on public civility that I invented out of whole cloth. Said Fred, now that last part I lied about, said Fred Ryan, Americans of all political persuasions are calling for a return to a culture of civility and respect in our political processes, social media platforms, schools, and communities. Again, you gotta talk to me, Fred, because I have a story to tell you about a political party you are not going to believe. During my service in the Reagan White House, I saw how successful leaders could be when they reached across the aisle in a respectful way to advance America's interests. I look forward to working with the Reagan Foundation and Institution in collaboration with other individuals and organizations to help restore civility to our politics and society. Now remember, kids, this is Driftglass talking now again. When Republicans talk about civility, what they really mean is impunity.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's only when liberals start to punch back against the overwhelming tide of Republican hate media, Republican bullshit, Republican lies, Republican treason, that suddenly every op-ed page in America gets really interested in civility. Before that, it didn't happen. I'm reminded of two stories, one quick and one about my local paper. The quick one is about Kathleen Parker. Kathleen Parker, who I believe worked for the Washington Post.
Yeah.
Kathleen Parker used to write the most vicious, atrocious crap about liberals, which was just standard fare for Republicans. They don't even hear themselves saying it. Just liberals are assumed to be, dunderheaded, America-hating, terrorist-loving filth. And it never bothered her. Just wrote that shit, and everybody applauded her and said what a good job she was doing right up until she wrote a column about Sarah Palin, saying Sarah Palin really isn't qualified to be vice president. And her next column, Kathleen Parker's next column, was all about, I'm a C word, I'm a bitch, I'm a this, I'm a that. Suddenly, out of nowhere, she was inundated with all this hateful email and all this hateful replies about what a horrible person she is and how she should die in a fire and burn in hell, bitch, and on and on and on and on and on and on and on. And she was utterly shocked. And you know what shocked her, Blue Gal? It shocked her to be treated the way liberals had been treated all along.
Right.
Because she never noticed all the things that were going on beneath her. She never noticed all the horrible things that her words instigated. She didn't give a shit as long as the fire was all outgoing at people like you and me, America-hating, terrorist-loving liberals. When the fire came back to her, holy shit, what the hell has happened to America that I can be criticized like this? My God, what's happened to civility in this country?
Civility,
yeah. That was Kathleen Parker. The second is a slightly longer story, which reminds me of a day back in, aught 18, I believe it was, way back when the publisher of our local Republican rag, the State Journal-Register, which is now down to about 4 pages, sports, obituaries, and ads, lent his voice to the chorus of very serious media people who wanted some goddamn civility returned to our fucking public discourse. The headline of that article, this is the publisher of the paper now, the headline was, civility should still matter. And then he proceeded to abuse the word we so badly that it took out a restraining order against him. Here are just the snippets of his abuse of the word we. We block messages. We tune into blah, blah, blah. We are exposed to fake news. In short, we're to blame. He means everybody. He means everyone in society. All 373 million Americans are all to blame for the Republican Party being a fucking disaster. We have become so entrenched on one side or the other, Blue Gal. We want our side to win at any cost, and we punish politicians who dare to try and reach a compromise. Yeah, this guy apparently was comatose during the Obama administration, which is weird because Barack Obama announced his candidacy for president in 2008 about 4 blocks away from the State Journal-Register headquarters. So it's kind of odd.
Biking distance from our house, yes.
It's kind of weird that this asshole didn't understand or remember the 8 years of Barack Obama trying to find compromise with this asshole's party and being told to go pound sand by a bunch of racists who this guy thinks are wonderful patriots. Continuing on. If they don't stand on the far left line or the far right line, we try to replace them with someone who will. And we've been doing it for too long. As you know, Dick Durbin, crazy bomb-throwing left-winger.
Oh, yeah.
Just a socialist, really, in sheep's clothing, as is everyone in the Democratic Party. Just look down the long list of Democrats, and you'll see how we're just tossing out Nikki Basinski. My God, she wears a red hat. She smokes Gawa cigarettes, and she walks around talking about Che Guevara all day long. Now, continuing, we now label each other with horrible names. You mean like feminazi?
Mhm.
You mean like that? We mock those, blah, blah, blah. We stifle free speech by shouting down speakers. Mind you, this is the same paper that was at the same time proudly syndicating the deranged weekly ravings of Ann Coulter and Mark Thiessen. This is the same paper that paid Ted fucking Nugent real American money to come to town and MC their big outdoor camping and hunting show. Because, he's a big outdoor camping and hunting guy. But the thing that really spun me up about this was how completely the 8-year, unhinged, racist primal scream of this asshole's political party during the Obama administration had just been completely obliterated from history. It was too inconvenient to remember the Republican Party as it existed just 3 years before because it flew in the face of this bullshit argument about civility and polarization and so forth. So we just let it go. That just went away. That just vanished into thin air. The whole history of the GOP during the Clinton years and during the Obama years just wiped away by the publisher of a local newspaper because it was inconvenient to his lying argument. Now, we do talk about the civility and the compromise thing, and we do ignore the fact that for 8 years, the Clinton and the 8 years of Obama, they were models of attempts to compromise and bargain in good faith, and how violently they were attacked. Bill Clinton was accused of everything under the sun. He was accused of murder. He was accused of assassinating his opponents. He was accused of murdering Vince Foster. He was accused of dealing drugs. He was accused of every crime you can imagine, dealing drugs, every crime you could imagine by Republicans, and this guy just let all that go to. That was so far in the past. But they've eliminated 2 whole Democratic presidential administrations and the entire Tea Party because it's inconvenient to their argument. And here's the thing, Blue Gal, civility is from the same goddamn slop bucket as partisanship and polarization and tribalism. You can't swing a dead cat at the Bulwark podcast without Charlie Sykes bitching about tribalism because it's just red jerseys and blue jerseys. And it's like, no, there's an actual reason that people are a member of the Democratic Party. It's not because, well, I've been brainwashed. I have no choice. There is one party that is full-on fascist and has been heading down that road for 40, 50 years. Another group of people have been trying to stop that and trying to pass legislation that helps poor people, saves the environment, gives people medical care, and generally treats human beings as worthy of the care and of their government, and treats the planet as a place we would like to give to our children. Those are not 2 tribes that have nothing to do with anything specific. But every time you hear partisanship and polarization and tribalism or civility, what they're trying to do is remove the moral and policy discussions around the parties from the discussion. They do not want to talk about the actual reasons why there's a difference between Republicans and Democrats, any more than, I suppose, in 1938, they didn't want to talk about the differences between the Nazis and the people the Nazis were trying to kill, because that would have been uncivil. Drawing distinctions between 2 groups of people is uncivil, and it's very, very tribal. And why do they do this? Well, now we turn to the late, great George Carlin for a short explanation of why the language of Shakespeare and the language of Chaucer has been murdered by these lying bastards. Quote, smug, greedy, well-fed white people have invented a language to conceal their sins. It's as simple as that. And it really is as simple as that. They do not want to talk about, and by God, as long as they control the media, they are not going to talk about the Republican Party as it exists today and has existed for 40 years. So they're going to talk about civility and polarization and tribalism and anything else to get off the subject that one party is absolutely destructive and to the future of this country and the planet, and the other party is trying weakly, sort of tepidly, in a civilized way to stop them. Those are the 2 tribes, and the most partisan group of people in the world, the most deeply tribal people in the world are the ones who declare that everyone else is tribal, that
Right.
nonpartisanship is the goal. No, if you have to go 1,000 miles to find a fence to straddle because you won't pick a fucking side in the future of your country, that's a problem. That's a real problem. You will not defend your country against fascists because you're afraid of sounding partisan. No, that makes you the worst of the worst. That makes you a person who knows better, but are too big of a coward or your paycheck depends too much on the media company that pays you to state the simple, obvious truth in simple, clear English language. End of story.
And I think we had a perfect example of this, and I hate to criticize our own senator.
Yeah.
But here is Tommy Tuberville, not our own senator,
Right.
blocking every appointment to the Joint Chiefs of Staff and the military and really damaging our preparedness. And then he goes off to Trump's birthday party during a vote.
Right.
And Dick Durbin, why don't you take advantage of that and pass some of these military things so that they can get moved and get their assignments done and so forth? And Dick Durbin as well, we don't do that. We don't take advantage that way. Well, who's taking advantage of his position as a senator to do something that no one else has done, to actually prevent appointments to the military?
Mm-hmm.
Republicans. One Republican. One crazy, thoroughly racist Republican.
Yeah. Who left his post to go to the birthday party for a traitor.
Of a traitor.
Yeah. And Dick Durbin.
And we're going to be civil about this and not take advantage.
And I know these are old men and old women who have this trembling embrace of this fragile institution that Republicans have worked for decades.
And this is why there are certain people out there that want to abolish the Senate.
Yeah, and I'm among them.
Yeah. So, Jeff Glass, before we go on, tell me if you get offers from both the Reagan Organization and Civility Conference, and political director of Fox News, which job are you going to take?
Well, I'm taking them both. No. You don't understand.
And work from home. WFH, baby. Just like Hannity.
How many people do you know in the media who work from home, have a book deal on the side, have a punditing job on the side, get paid to write articles in the Atlantic on the side? And
Hannity records a show from home, does Friday night's show on Thursday because he likes long weekends, and manages his slumlord apartments throughout the South, making $3 million a week.
No, what I would do is take them both and then sprinkle some Greenwald on the top of that and say, no one will give me a platform to share my opinions. I'll see you on Rumble in 20 minutes. So, I will take all the money and all the perks and all the bullshit, and then I'll complain that it's not enough because I'm a special little snowflake who deserves more than that, just like Joe Scarborough.
And I was going to say this to the end of the show. I have this in our notes at the end of the show. We ran our first ad on Buzzsprout this week and got $20.
We did $20,
and the ad's done. The contract is fulfilled, and we got $20.
So I'm gonna take a shower now because it's commerce.
I have no grief about any liberal podcaster that tells the truth making a great success out of their podcast. I mean, there are podcasts out there that have 1 million Patreons, and good for them. Mm-hmm. Glad they're succeeding. Glad they're making a living, a wonderful living. That's great. I have a big problem when people like Matt Walsh make $150,000 a month from YouTube until they notice that he's espousing Nazi propaganda.
Oh, he's a Nazi. Oh.
Well, next month you aren't going to get paid $150,000 then, Matt. Yeah. And then he's, cancel culture, deplatforming, blah, blah, blah. And $20, folks. We got $20.
Well, and as I mentioned during our pre-show, look, Donald Trump got $2 million at his birthday. Mm-hmm. He raised $2 million on his birthday. Yep. If your birthday fundraiser blew just half as
next month,
if you can just manage half as successful as this lying mushmouth traitor, $1 million, just 50% of what Trump pulled in, we will never ask for another dime from anybody ever again.
Oh my gosh,
that would cover expenses for the next decade. I don't know, thereabouts.
Well, and that kind of reminds me of. I don't remember the name of the person, and I'm sorry, but there was a sports figure. Mm-hmm. And like many sports figures, this person who achieved a great deal of success in his sports world bought his mother a house.
Yeah.
And I think it was Rolling Stone magazine.
I think it was Charles
Barkley whose mother said, I can't accept the house because I'll lose my Section 8 voucher.
I'm not sure, but I think so.
One of them did. One of these sports multimillionaire contract sports figures bought his mother a house, and the mother said, well, I can't move because I'll lose my Section 8.
Right.
And so when you say things like that, when you say, if we make $1 million, we'll never ask again, my immediate gut reaction is we're going to lose our Obamacare subsidy.
Yeah. Yep.
And I'm sorry I think that way, but that's exactly, that's when you're poor, that's how you think,
Yeah.
you know?
Well, and that, and that's honestly, that thought, I'm sure, crosses the minds of millions of people. I'm sure all the millions of people who are about to lose their Medicaid because COVID-19 has ended and the special provisions have ended, and in some states are being thrown off their health care. I'm sure that's exactly what goes through their mind. We're
very fortunate to live in Illinois where the legislature and the governor is sincerely making an effort to let everyone know to reapply. And contacting by mail and youngest child had a wonderful experience yesterday. She got a letter from her Medicaid provider who said, "We've noticed that you've been seeing this primary care provider, and the bills are coming in from this primary care provider instead of the one we assigned you. So we've changed you over to the doctor that you're already seeing."
Oh, thank you.
And I just thought to myself, being poor is a full-time job, and you're supposed to do paperwork to make sure the right primary care provider's on your Medicaid card. For some people, that's just too much.
Oh, yeah. And
it's just too much.
And it's on top of other things. If you're
of
poor,
everything else, of trying to make sure your food stamps are there, trying to make sure that you've got, your car starts in the morning.
And these are not people who are lazy. These are people who are probably working a job or two or three.
Two or three jobs.
And their house is working, and they're just trying to get enough above water, like millions of us are, so that we don't drown. And I don't begrudge anybody their media success or the podcasting success.
If they're not lying.
If they're not lying.
Or espousing Nazism. Yes.
But I mean, liberal podcasts specifically. I think that's great. I think the spirit of the original Netroots, which was lift all boats, is dead. That is not the ethos of the podcast networks that I'm thinking of. It is me and my friends and people we know. And we're on the coast and we're staying on the coast and we do good work and we raise money for the right causes, but we're not interested in sort of
helping other podcasters raise their,
except if they're very much like in business, we skip the generation.
Yeah.
So I'm not interested in helping the people below me. I'm interested in helping the 22-year-old that my friend knows who's in college, which is great. But it sort of leaves an entire group of people.
I call that Gloria Steinem syndrome.
Yeah.
She's willing to start all kinds of programs for people in her grandchildren's generation to become interns in Washington.
Right. Exactly.
But there are 52-year-old women wanting and qualified to run for Congress right now.
Yeah. No. That's it. Yeah. Let their grandmothers take care of them. But the second thing,
Granny's dead. Sorry.
Yeah, sorry.
Oh, too bad.
No more Eleanor. But the other thing is, I don't begrudge anyone their success who doesn't lie and who's a good liberal, etc. I really don't. I wish it were more of the let's raise everyone up, let's share, let's bring other people in, because we've been knocking on every door we know, and just no one is interested in us as part of their thing. That's fine. What bothers me is when I look at Win Red and I look at Donald Trump's fundraiser and I see, Jesus Christ, there's so much fucking money on the right.
Yep.
There's so much unbelievable amount of stupid, racist money on the right going to everybody with a fucking microphone. Kyle Rittenhouse is never going to have to work a day in his life because he murdered people. And he's side piece at Donald Trump's parties. And he is going to be a celebrity until something very bad happens to him or he does something very bad and goes to prison. But there is, I'm staggered. It's like when you consider the size of the universe compared to the solar system, compared to the galaxy. It's like, we live in this little area with these parameters and this is how we think. We don't want to lose our Obamacare subsidies. And then you look outside and go, Jesus Christ, if you are willing to be a rotten person, there's no limit to how much money you can raise, how many rubes you can fleece, and get away with it. There's no downside to it unless you actually get caught.
No, you can take money out of your nonprofit and give it to your law firm.
Yeah, you can buy a house, you can buy a boat, you can buy two houses, and it all depends on the stupidity and credulity of the same people we are trying to help. We're trying to say, for God's sake, save yourself. Get the hell out of that party because that party is death on wheels. But you know what? If you want to make real money, become an unpaid lawyer advisor to Donald Trump.
Oh, yeah. Those unpaid lawyer advisors that say what he wants to hear. Because, why listen to actual lawyers when you have Judicial Watch's Tom Fitton by your side? From the Washington Post Trump time and again rejected the advice from lawyers and advisors who urged him to cooperate, and instead took the advice of Tom Fitton, the head of the conservative group Judicial Watch, and a range of others who told him he could legally keep the documents and should fight the Justice Department. Trump would often cite Tom Fitton to others, and Fitton told some of Trump's lawyers that Trump could keep the documents, even as they disagreed.
Mm-hmm.
Several other Trump advisors blamed Fitton for convincing Trump that he could keep the documents and repeatedly mentioning the Clinton socks case, which Trump has mentioned all week. A reference to tapes Bill Clinton stored in his sock drawer of his secret interviews with historian Taylor Branch that served as the basis of Branch's 2009 book documenting the Clinton presidency.
Mm-hmm.
Judicial Watch lost a lawsuit in 2012 that demanded the audio recordings be designated as presidential records and that the National Archives take custody of the recordings. A court opinion issued at the time stated there was no legal mechanism for the archives to force Clinton to turn over the recordings. They were treated like a personal diary.
Right, which you're allowed to keep.
And
right.
If Donald Trump had had the wherewithal to keep a personal diary with his golf scores, his mistress's phone numbers,
whatever,
and, certain pages that he'd torn out and eaten or flushed down the toilet, he would be allowed to keep that and take it home. Personal notebook.
Mm-hmm.
And perhaps if it had Israeli defense secrets in it, they might have had an issue. But otherwise, if it's his personal notes and recollections of being in the White House, he gets to keep that. Getting back to Washington Post, Trump's unwillingness to give the documents back did not surprise those who knew him well. Former White House Chief of Staff John Kelly said that he was particularly unlikely to heed requests from people or agencies he disliked. Quote, he's incapable of admitting wrongdoing. He wanted to keep it. And he says, you're not going to tell me what to do. I'm the smartest guy in the room. Unquote.
Uh-huh.
A PS to this, Fitton has no legal training whatsoever. He has a bachelor's degree in English from George Washington University. He also has a gift for telling Trump what he wants to hear.
Yeah.
That's that.
And this is where people who say Donald Trump's not a conservative, he's not a real conservative. He is absolutely a conservative. He has all the elements. He doesn't listen to anyone who tells him he's wrong. He will not admit when he fucked up. He blames everybody else for all of his problems. He blames the left. He blames the media. And he only listens to people who tell him what he wants to hear. And when he gets caught, it's what about Hillary? What about Bill Clinton? What about all these other things that are completely fucking irrelevant? That group of behaviors collectively is a conservative. That's who they are. That's how they operate. They don't listen to anyone who tells them anything they don't want to hear. And like most of our Never Trump friends, they're not going to listen to anything we have to say because they're the smartest people in the world. They know.
Well, and this brings me to a question I have for you, Driftglass. It seemed to me before this week that Donald Trump watched the same media that his followers did and would repeat the Hannity talking points. And so then the Trump followers would say, oh, look, he's saying what I'm thinking. Well, he was just repeating Sean Hannity talking points. And now I think he's a victim of his own brain in that he now believes all, and maybe he always has, but he actually believes all the bullshit that comes out of his mouth. He believes all the bullshit that is pro-Trump.
Yeah.
And I don't know, before I kind of thought, well, he's in on the game and he knows their rubes. But I think now he thinks his followers are simply his tribe and his piggy bank, but he really believes his own bullshit. Do you understand what I'm saying? I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong.
No, I have. If we go back 500 episodes in this podcast, you'll probably find us talking about my theory that Republicans have always kept two sets of books. They keep the books of the lies they tell the base. The bullshit, crazy ass stuff they tell them to whip them up and get them to the polls.
Yep, rainbow fentanyl and the border.
Yeah. Well, no, I mean, this is going back to Bill Clinton murdered Vince Foster.
Right.
There's a long history of Republican media and Republican elected officials lying to the base to get them angry and stupid enough to vote for things that will kill them or hurt them. That's the Republican thing. The second set of books was always kept by, party leadership. You know, math still has to work. And the military still has to be, you know, reasonably strong. And there's still things you have to do to keep the country running. And we can't just throw them overboard. This is why they got mad at Bush retroactively and Jeb proactively, which was they're the ones who kept taking out that second book and saying, yeah, but even though liberals are traitors and monsters and baby-killing liars, you have to work with them and compromise. Whereas the first set of books says, no, liberals are monsters. Never compromise with them. They're evil. Their intentions are evil. Anybody who compromises with them is a rhino and a squish and cannot be trusted. And what Trump did was throw away the first book or the second book. Throw it away. Like, screw this. We're just going to live as if all the lies we've been telling them are true and add on to them and propagate them and mutate them and then let QAnon weirdos and Newsmax weirdos mutate the lies and then feed those lies back to them over and over again, because the whole governing thing is bullshit. This is a grift. This is how do we get maximum power and maximum money from the stupidest people in this country. And thank God the Republican Party spent 40 years making the base this dumb, because now they'll believe anything we say. And at some point, I think his mush brain just started thinking in those terms.
Yeah.
Just, you know, what? Well, it's easier to lie if you, as a writer, maybe you know this. Once you understand how a character thinks and you can write in that character's voice, it becomes easier.
You do cross over. You cross over a river where you're all of a sudden thinking like them. Absolutely.
It's called, I think, character possession. And I think what happened a long time ago was Trump just ingested enough Rush Limbaugh, Sean Hannity bullshit that it's easier to talk and think that way when it comes naturally to you. And now it's become reflex. Thinking like that, blaming that, pulling that shit out, hitting every Benghazi button, Clinton socks button, things that mean nothing to normal human beings, but are all code words, are all those Winter Soldier code words to the GOP base. And I don't think mush brain Donald is capable of doing anything but that now. So he's running on automatic. There's just a tape in his head that goes around and around and around. And that tape is fraying and it's old and it's yellow and it's going to break at some point. Yeah. But I
did nothing and they indicted me.
Right. And then he can talk for an hour about, you know, Hillary Clinton.
Crooked Hillary.
Hillary, and everyone's against me. And you know what? That weird, paranoid, they're all against me bullshit is exactly how the Republican base brain operates. He's speaking to them in their own operating system language.
Right. Yep.
So however crazy it is to us, it works for them. And that's why they send him all that money.
It turns them on, literally, like a machine. Yeah.
I have a quiz for you, sort of a pop quiz.
Okay.
It's who said this and when, and you're going to know this. You're going to know this, but who said this and when? I blanked out the names and the dates to make a point.
Okay.
And this is a quote from the Associated Press.
Okay.
House Republicans coupled expressions of concern with a public show of support for blank on Wednesday as blank brushed aside fresh questions about his record. Venting anger over attacks against blank and other targets, some members of the GOP rank and file criticized Democrats in unusually sharp terms. One, Representative Bob Ney of Ohio, was quoted by fellow Republicans at a closed-door meeting as calling the head of the Democratic Campaign Committee a snake. With lawmakers back from a 2-week break, Representative Roy Blunt of Missouri, the GOP whip, told reporters, quote, "I don't see any wavering of the support for blank. I think a lot of members think he's taking arrows for all of us." At a news conference, other Republicans said Democratic attacks were an attempt to win control of the House, unquote. So
Bob Ney kind of gives it away.
It gives it away.
It gives it away. It's Tom DeLay.
It's Tom DeLay. Tom. Remember when Tom DeLay was the racist, lunatic, corrupt asshole who controlled the Republican Party and all the moderates and all the conservatives, and the conservative media lined up behind him right up until it was too late.
Right up until they didn't.
Right until they didn't. And then it was never met the guy, wouldn't know him if I saw him on the street, but he kept all of their balls in a Crown Royal bag.
Yes,
and he did. His nickname was the Hammer. And he was willing to avenge himself brutally. And do you remember the reaction from a certain New York Times op-ed columnist when Tom DeLay finally shit the bed hard enough that he was forced to admit there's something wrong with the Republican Party? That op-ed editorial writer was a guy named David Brooks.
And what did he say? We need a third party?
And his response was, delay on the right and the Netroots delays on the left are the problem with America. The Sunni Shia style of politics must end. We must have a third party to solve this problem because both sides do it. That was in 2005. Imagine all the years that have gone on between then and now, and these assholes are pulling the same both sides shit every time. Every time. I got to meet the people at the top of the pyramid one day who are the people who are putting a professional metaphorical gun to the heads of reporters. It's like, say both sides do it. Say it or you're a dead man. Say it. And we know one of them was Chris Licht. We know they do this because they've been exposed as doing it, as people in charge saying, this is the story we're going to tell regardless of the facts. But the reaction to a corrupt leader of the Republican Party who is clearly deranged and racist was the moderates line up and blame Democrats. They're all against him and attacking him. We're all
and he's a saint because he's taking all these arrows for us.
Right. They're out to get all of us.
Well, and this is why, I mean, you read that, and all the while I was thinking about Ken Paxton in Texas.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
And state, how they had to take Memorial Day weekend to get rid of this guy, to impeach this guy and put him on trial because he's moved his mistress into town,
right?
using hush money from a billionaire donor, and in the meantime, Ken Paxton, while they're voting on his impeachment, is making phone calls to members threatening them.
Yeah. Yep.
This is Texas Republican politics.
Yep.
And whether it's Tom DeLay or Ken Paxton, doesn't matter. Who would do that? I just kept thinking to myself, who would do that? Who would expose themselves in that way? To the point where, one of the Republican House members stands up and says, Ken Paxton is right now calling members and threatening their reelections while we're voting on this.
Well, it's a mobster power move.
Right.
You know, if you're going to be a witness against the boss, I wouldn't make any long-term plans, my friend.
Right.
You know?
Right.
This is just
and clearly he didn't think that the party had changed. And again, this is where I quote Jennifer Rubin from this week. Paraphrasing Hemingway, she said, change happens slowly and then all at once.
Yeah. Yeah. So,
and that's what's going to happen with Trump. And that's what happened with Tom DeLay and Ken Paxton. All of a sudden we're coffee party now.
Yeah.
Don't know who Trump who.
Trump who. And if this is true, in 5 or 6 years, we can look forward to Donald Trump being on Dancing with the Stars. Isn't that
Dancing
exciting?
with the Stars?
Yeah, yeah.
I hope he's in jail.
Yeah.
or somewhere else.
Yeah.
And the thing is, a lot of Republicans hope he's just gone by that time. We know what they say when the microphones are off.
In 2005, a lot of Republicans wished Tom DeLay were gone too.
Yeah.
But they knew that if they were the first to jump, if they were the one, it's like jumping off an out-of-control train. Jump off too soon and you get crushed. Jump off too late and the explosion kills you. Mm-hmm. So there's a moment when it's safe enough to do what a normal moral human being would have done 10 years ago. And we're seeing kind of that happen, except Trump has more power, more clout, more money, and more control over the lists and the fundraising mechanisms.
The data.
Yeah, than Tom DeLay ever did. So
Yep.
Stay tuned.
And now we did mention Chris Licht. Now that we are in between Chris Licht's boot being removed from the neck of CNN and the boot of some other right-wing henchman of David Zaslav, he's coming. Replacing Chris Licht, Jake Tapper found himself in free fall long enough to cut away from Trump's raving loony post-indictment press conference and call it dangerous to air it.
Yeah, and say a lot of crazy there, a lot of crazy.
Yeah. We see this as dangerous. We're not going to air it live.
Yeah. And speaking of the fruits of stupid money, God bless David Corn of the Nation, who has your daily no labels update. Quote, whenever a supporter heeds the outfit's call for bipartisanship and moderation and clicks on its donate button, he or she is putting money in the pocket of a conservative tech firm that's advancing far-right extremism, unquote. It's like I could have written it myself, Blue Gal. Mm-hmm.
Yep. Let's do a news roundup, Dirk Glass.
All right, after you.
I don't know if you remember this from last week, but 2 of Trump's top lawyers resigned.
Oh, yeah.
Jim Trusty, and I love that name,
Yeah.
and John Rowley didn't explain why they had resigned other than to say this is a logical moment to do so.
Yeah. Yep.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye now. Bye-bye.
Given his indictment and, quote, we will no longer represent him on either the indicted case or the January 6th investigation. After which Trump had to spend the day before his appearance in federal court scrambling to find a qualified Florida lawyer willing to join his defense team as he faces the Justice Department's first prosecution of a former president. As Rachel Bidikofer tweeted, imagine being so shady you can't find a criminal defense attorney to work with you in Miami.
In Miami. I mean, the Miami Vice jokes just write themselves.
Yes, they do.
A Fox News chyron, that's the little thing that runs below the screen to tell you what you're looking at, referred to President Joe Biden as a, quote, wannabe dictator, unquote, who had, quote, his political rival arrested, unquote, hours after Trump pleaded not guilty to 37 federal charges related to his handling of classified documents after he left office and his refusal to return them because he's a criminal. Fox briefly aired side-by-side visual of Trump's speech from his New Jersey golf club and Biden speaking at the White House earlier in the day.
I have to issue a correction there. He is not being indicted for classified documents. He's being indicted for military documents.
Right.
And they left the classified part off because they don't need to get into that argument. There's no need to.
For now.
Yes. After Trump's arraignment, he stopped at Miami's popular Cuban restaurant Versailles and promised supporters he was buying food for everyone. Turns out he left without paying for a single item.
Yeah. Well, I heard Mexico's going to pay for all that food.
Mexico's going to pay for it, someone tweeted. Yep.
Mexico's going to pay for the food. And he's going to pay for it as soon as he unveils that awesome healthcare plan that he's going to unveil. In
2 weeks. He'll pay for it in 2 weeks.
This is what Alina Habba, a Trump attorney, had to say about Trump's indictment. Quote, people in charge of this country do not love America. They hate Donald Trump. She added, what we are witnessing today is the blatant and unapologetic weaponization of the criminal justice system, because that's a new word that they've taught all the stupid people to say. Anytime anything goes wrong, it's some institutions being weaponized against patriots like me.
Yeah. The locker up crowd is real upset about the weaponization. Yeah. Trump vowed to continue running for president, even if he's convicted, as part of that 37-count federal felony indictment, saying, I'll never leave. And he's not legally prohibited from running for president from prison or as a convicted felon. I'm not going to read any more of this because this is quotes from Trump, and I am tired of it.
Yeah.
So if you want to see quotes from Trump, you're going to have to go someplace else. I just cannot stand the sound of his voice, the tone of his quotes, and I'm just done.
So what you're doing is you're canceling me.
Silo. I'm siloing.
That's me.
Listeners to this podcast, you're in a silo now with
me. You're canceling me. Now, okay, let's add it to the list. I can't talk about Glenn Greenwald. I can't talk about I can't talk about Donald Trump. It's fine. We'll just
he's smiling while he's saying
I am. I'm totally kidding. I believe me, as I do a thing that you all probably know by now, I call the steeplechase, which is go channel to channel to channel, see what's happening on across the crazy spectrum.
Newsmax and OAN Fox, and all those,
at any given time. And I cannot listen. I can, but I have to really gird myself to listen to that whiny, orange, shitbag traitor every time he opens his mouth, and anybody who defends him on Fox. Newsmax is so fucking crazy. To me, it's entertaining. I understand it's dangerous. I understand I'm looking into a melted down nuclear core. I understand that. But it's so fucking off the wall.
Well, and I think those of us who have survived abusive relationships know that magic moment when you've just had enough.
That's it.
And you're not responding or reacting anymore. No. You're just getting out.
Right.
And that's the point I have reached with him.
I long for I used to say this. We long for the day when we could have a reasonable, civil debate with conservatives over fucking tax policy. Or anything. We could talk about philosophy. But those days are long, 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 long gone. And you know what? They didn't die in 2016. They died a long time before that. Whatever Trump friends tell you. By the way, speaking of people who are in an abusive relationship, House Democrats killed a Republican effort to censure Adam Schiff and fine him $16 million for investigating allegations that Trump's 2016 campaign colluded with Russia, which it most definitely did, by the way. The chamber voted 225 to 196 to 7 to table the resolution, with 20 Republicans, not 200, 20 Republicans joining with the Democrats. The resolution sought to fine Schiff half the cost of special counsel Robert Mueller's investigation into Trump and Russia's alleged ties. The censure resolution, was sponsored by GOP Representative Ana Paulina Luna of Florida, who claims that Schiff, quote, exploited his positions on the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence to encourage and excuse abusive intelligence investigations of Americans for political purposes, unquote. Yeah, okay, honey.
And I tweeted that Ana Paulina Luna would first have to reimburse the American taxpayer for Benghazi, Solyndra, Fast and Furious, Uranium One, Christmas card list, tan suit, Seth Rich, baby parts, her email, Sydney Blumenthal, and the tarmac. And WinRed is going to want to cut off of the top of all that money. And then you mentioned that there's Crazy Durham's House of Minimal Indictments.
Yeah. How much would you pay for one misdemeanor? But wait, there's more. Oh, wait, there isn't any more. That's it. That's all we got.
And how many people did Mueller indict?
Mueller,
like 13 Russians.
Yeah.
Put several of Trump's campaign managers in jail.
Yeah. It's a witch hunt that caught a lot of witches.
And
would have probably cost Trump his career if it weren't for the fact that Bill Barr took that report, ate it, and then shit out the most congenial lie about it being cleared and Trump being absolved.
4-page summary full of lies.
Put that turd on a silver platter. And then Bob Mueller decided he wasn't going to contradict, Bill Barr, because that's not what we do now. We're institutionalists. And he just let it lay there, stinking up the joint. And that's why Trump got off. It had nothing to do with his innocence. Guilty as sin. But it gave these assholes another thing to plug into their brains and talk about when the going gets tough. What about Russia collusion? What about Russia? Yeah, okay.
Indict him for that.
Indict him for that. A federal judge, this is some good news, will allow E. Jean Carroll to amend her original defamation suit against Trump to include comments he made at a CNN town hall. The New York author is seeking at least $10 million more in damages. A day after Carroll won her $5 million sex abuse and defamation case against him, Trump appeared on CNN and called Carroll's allegations, quote, a fake story, and dismissed her as a whack job. So keep talking, asshole. Just keep digging.
Keep talking. More than 725,000 Medicaid recipients have lost coverage since the end of COVID-19's public health emergency. The federal pandemic-era policy required state Medicaid agencies to provide coverage, even if their eligibility changed. Since April, 14 states have started disenrolling people from Medicaid, with another 22 states starting the disenrollment processes this month. An estimated 17 million people could lose Medicaid coverage. And some states are doing well at that, at letting people know so they can reapply if they need to. The economy is doing well and there's lots of jobs, so it's possible that some of the people who lost Medicaid coverage gained coverage from their work. But the important thing is that the state let people know. And there are Republican states that never expanded Medicaid, who don't have good agencies in their states to inform people, who are not doing a good job. And people are just losing coverage.
And that's on purpose.
Florida, for instance.
Yep. At least 11 states have enacted 13 restrictive voting laws in 2023 so far. 2 more restrictive voting bills in 2 states are awaiting the governor's approval. At least 15 states, meanwhile, have enacted 19 laws making it easier to vote. Katie Hobbs in Arizona has vetoed 20 election-related bills.
20. And what about those cyber ninjas?
Yeah, what about those cyber ninjas?
Someone who should reimburse for their investigation.
Or be waterboarded. I'll take waterboarding. But yeah, just a pure scam. Top to bottom, front to back. And it was taken and run with by everyone on the right, and there will be no penalty paid.
Well, no media was allowed in except for OAN, right, who paid for the privilege of going in. So,
yep.
The Bidening does continue. Inflation fell to 4% in May from a year earlier. It's the lowest reading in 2 years. and well below last June's peak of 9.1%, which was a 40-year high. Go Biden. You're doing a good job.
Dark Brandon, keep it up. Kevin McCarthy struck a temporary deal with 11 members of the Freedom Caucus to end their protest that prevented the House from considering any business for almost a week. You know who would never have allowed that to happen? Nancy Pelosi. Yeah. Way to go, Kevin. You really are just a sponge, just a stack of jello.
Hashtag fail.
Fail, loser. The House is now on track to vote on several bills this week, including bills on gas stoves and pistol braces, because,
that's really critical issues facing America. Yeah,
You're trying to take away my gas stove. Multiple members leaving McCarthy's office said the Conservative Freedom Caucus agreed to end the blockade while they continue discussions about deeper spending cuts. Let's hurt more poor people. Matt Gaetz added that the, quote, power-sharing agreement, unquote, McCarthy negotiated with conservatives to win the speaker's gavel in January must be renegotiated. Yeah.
In other words, renegotiated so that the ethics committee doesn't come after me.
Yeah. Pray
that's happening.
Pray I don't alter the deal further.
Yeah, seriously. According to a CBS News poll, 61% of likely Republican primary voters said the federal indictment charging Trump with 37 felonies won't change their view of him. 80% of likely GOP primary voters said Trump should still be able to be president, even if he's convicted of violating the Espionage Act.
Yeah.
And some of them think he is still president.
Yeah, well, he's secretly president. He's secretly doing great things. This week, the Republican Study Committee, RSC, led by Representative Kevin Hern of Oklahoma, released a budget proposal that would gradually raise Social Security's full retirement age to 69. It also makes the Trump tax cuts for billionaires permanent. In other Kevin Hern news, the Oklahoma Republican just disclosed purchases of stock in $OKE and $MMP. Purchases were made just a day after the two energy companies announced a merger. Hern has served on the House Subcommittee on Energy and Mineral Resources. You know, making money off the people you regulate.
Yeah. I don't think House members or senators should be able to buy individual stocks. Lots of people don't think that.
I don't either. I agree. Ethics schmethics.
From the Washington Post, documents show how conservative doctors influenced abortion and trans rights. A small group of conservative doctors has sought to shape the nation's most contentious policies on abortion and transgender rights by promoting views rejected by the medical establishment as scientific fact, according to documents reviewed by the Washington Post that describe the group's internal strategies. For years, the group has presented statistics and talking points to state legislators, public school officials, and the American public as settled science, while internal documents emphasize how religion and morality influence its positions. Mm-hmm. Meeting minutes from 2021 describe how the organization worked with religious groups to, quote, affect the idea makers through the high courts, professional literature, and legislatures, unquote. Mm-hmm. Joseph Zanga, founder of the American College of Pediatricians, who had led the American Academy of Pediatrics in the late 1990s, described the splinter organization as, quote, a Judeo-Christian traditional values organization.
Yeah. And they're coming after everybody. They're going after trans kids. They're going after women's rights. They're going after counting, guns. The entire checklist of the whack job right stuff, all the horrible things they want to enact and force down our throats. That's what this group is trying to give a patina of science to, when it's all just shit they made up out of a 3,000-year-old book that doesn't allow women to exist, will stone a woman for cheating on her husband, and will kill people for handling pigs.
Well, and the reason that guns are the number one killer of children in the United States has a lot to do with the fact that there are people that just don't store guns correctly in the home, and toddlers get them, and this happened this week. Yes. I can barely talk about it, but accidents in the home regarding toddlers and handguns. And it used to be that pediatricians could ask you as a parent, when you brought your toddler in for his shots, do you have a gun in your house? You have to lock it up. You have to.
You have to.
Your child will shoot themselves in the head. So please lock the gun away. And the NRA, and I'm sure this group of assholes, stopped that from happening.
Right, because of freedom and Jesus.
Because freedom.
Yeah.
And the freedom to allow your toddler to shoot you or shoot himself has to be protected. It's ridiculous.
Yep. It's all ridiculous. And let's end up with the most ridiculous piece of news this week.
Yeah.
In tragic news from the world of fictional characters, according to the decaying husk of alcoholic Giuliani, the imaginary witness who had the goods on Joe Biden has died.
He died.
He died.
He was in Canada.
And then his dog ate his homework, and then his dog ate him, and he pooped out some poop, and no one knows where that poop is. So, sorry, that witness is just gone.
He died, and the tapes rotted with him. So
we don't know
right
what
away. So no tapes.
There's no evidence of the police decided that Giuliani should just be.
It's better left unsolved.
Yeah, I will just leave that alone.
Yeah, you promised.
I promised.
Driftglass promised me he would not talk about dead Republicans in the show.
Promised. I will not.
Me.
I will not. I will simply say Rudy Giuliani is closer to the grave than anyone I know.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
In local news.
Yeah, let's talk about local news. Some good local news. After you, Blue Gal.
Illinois libraries. We mentioned this was going to happen a couple of episodes ago, and now it has. Illinois has passed, and the governor has signed the first of its kind law that will penalize libraries that ban books. J.B. Pritzker signed into law a bill that he says will make Illinois the first state in the nation to outlaw book bans. And there was some concern among some of my colleagues at Crooks and Liars that this might be just the other side of the book banning coin, that we would force libraries to carry gay books or somehow make a liberal influence on libraries and so forth. That's not what it is. I had to correct them. The American Library Association has guidelines for libraries called the Books Bill of Rights, I think it is. And that it's a very common sense, do not ban books because of ideology. It's okay to do things age appropriately, but you don't decide to ban a book because someone disagrees with it.
Right.
That we have freedom of speech in this country and freedom of thought, and so you carry a book because it's a book and it has ideas in it.
And librarians and teachers are trained professionals, and they know what they're doing.
That what is age appropriate. They learn what is age appropriate and so forth. And so what this bill and what this law does is if you want state funding for your library, and Illinois gives, I think, something like $86 million a year to libraries. If you want that money, you have to adopt this Library Association Bill of Rights. And if you do that, you get the money. And if you don't, you don't. So it's a funding situation. It's not the state looking at your individual book list or controlling your library. The state government is not going to be looking over your shoulder, but they want you to adopt the guidelines of the American Library Association. And if you do that, then you get state funding for your library.
Yeah.
And we are going to share with you now a 1-minute clip of Governor Pritzker speaking after he signed this bill into law. He definitely wins the Don't Sugarcoat It award this week. You're going to want to listen carefully for his directing his remarks to a certain governor of Florida.
Take it away, JB.
Take it away, JB.
The argument for banning books always begins with the claim that it's about protecting the children. And yes, of course, we all want to protect our children, so they're reading age-appropriate material. But banning books from libraries isn't about that at all. Book bans are about censorship, marginalizing people, marginalizing ideas and facts. Regimes ban books, not democracies. Nazi Germany, fascist Italy, the Taliban's Afghanistan. We refuse to let a vitriolic strain of white nationalism coursing through our country determine whose histories are told, not in Illinois. While certain hypocritical governors are banning books written by LGBTQ authors, but then claiming censorship when the media fact-checks them, here in Illinois, we are showing the nation what it really looks like to stand up for liberty.
And that's our governor. Feel free to move to Illinois. He's a great guy. Each week, we post to our Facebook page and website an Internet Kitty sent in by you, the listeners. This week's Internet Kitty is Darwin. Darwin is a highly evolved, see what I did there?
I do.
Rescue cat, who in this photo is helping his human put together a woman's march Jigsaw puzzle. He will bat away the wrong piece with his paws. Nope, that doesn't go there.
No.
And of course, Darwin eats freshly poured cat food, our fake sponsor. Whether you serve pet store perfection or dollar store dreck, your cats will sit on the kitchen floor and demand that the food they eat is only freshly poured. Freshly poured, freshly poured. Oh, my Lord, it's freshly poured.
Freshly poured, freshly poured. Oh, my Lord, it's freshly poured.
And you can visit Darwin at our Facebook page or website, and you can send your internet kitty, dog, or other pet to us at our email address, proleftpodcast@gmail.com, where you can also write to both of us. Feel free to write us. We love hearing from you. Be aware that if you write to us at any of our addresses, we reserve the right to read your email or U.S. Postal Service, go Postal Unions, letter on the air unless you say otherwise. #FireToJoy. Don't forget our gourmet coffee guideline. If you can afford to buy an espresso-based beverage for yourself, we would love an iced coffee right about now.
Oh, that'd be so good right
This
now.
is not charity. This is actually our job. And we need your donation to pay for our health insurance. That's really the case. Please share our show on social media. And if you love this podcast, please get someone else to listen to. And thank you for doing that. Hey, Drift Class, how are the Internet Kitties doing this week?
Well, Blue Gal, the Internet Kitties wish to remind you that in fulfillment of prophecy, the exact second we put this podcast in the can last week, Il Duce was indicted.
Let's think about living.
Think about living.
Let's think about loving.
Think about loving.
Let's think about the hooping and the hopping and the popping and the loving, lovey-dovey. Let's forget about the wine and the crying, the shooting and the dying, and the fellow with a switchblade knife. Let's think about living. Let's think about life.
A Professional Left podcast is recorded under a Creative Commons license. Copyright 2023 DGBG Productions.